Hi everyone. Recently, Russia's defense minister Sergey Shoigu had called up on defense ministers of all the major powers in the world. In fact, he had 2 calls in a span of a week with his US counterpart. Then he went on to speak to his counterparts in Europe, India, and many other countries. What Russia has said in these calls is that Ukraine is working on a dirty bomb. And they plan to detonate this dirty bomb in a particular location in Ukraine. Before we talk about that, we need to first understand that weapons of war are classified into conventional and non-conventional. See, conventional weapons are not weapons of mass destruction. They include artillery, small arms, armored combat vehicles, light weapons, or missiles with conventional ammunition. Whereas unconventional weapons include biological, nuclear, radiation, radiological, and these kind of weapon systems. They are classified as weapons of mass destruction, or WMD. So a dirty bomb is a mixture of explosives like dynamite and radioactive powder. So when a dirty bomb explodes, it can be loaded into as a warhead into a missile or a particular ammunition, and if it detonates, the dynamite or the explosive used will throw away the radioactive dust in the location where it explodes. The difference between dirty bomb and a nuclear bomb is that dirty bomb does not involve a chain reaction of nuclear atoms. It's not an atomic blast, it's a dynamite blast. But what it does is that it releases radioactive particles into a particular geography. And we all know how dangerous radioactive particles are. Once they are released into an atmosphere, that particular location becomes uninhabitable for a very long time. People die a very slow and painful death in that particular geography. At least few kilometers can be uninhabitable due to these dirty bombs. And if you have to clean these locations after the bomb explosion, you'll have to spend billions of dollars, and it will take a lot of years to make them relivable. So dirty bombs instill fear into the minds of your opponent if you threaten to use it. And that's what a lot of countries do. As expected, the Western countries have totally rubbished this acquisition that Russia has made on them. They claim that this is probably a false flag from Russia to kind of use a dirty bomb itself. But we know for sure that one of them is lying. Both of them cannot lie. One of them is lying. So who is actually lying? Well, in geopolitics, you will never know. Let's try to understand who will actually gain from this. So let's assume that for a moment. It's not going to happen even in your wildest imagination. But let's assume that Russia is able to convince the world that Ukraine is indeed planning to use a dirty bomb. Who will gain from this? Now, from a Russian perspective, basically, there are certain gains, like they can basically force a tactical retreat of Ukraine from a particular land if they use a dirty bomb, or probably they can instill a psychological fear into the Ukrainian soldiers that, any moment the dirty bomb can be thrown on them, or it can escalate the war further by giving Russia a pretext to escalate the war further. That's also something that Russia can gain out of it. But more importantly, Russia will lose from such a step if it uses a nuclear bomb or a dirty bomb, because neutral countries like India, China, and France or Turkey, if I call them neutral, or Hungary, they will then be obligated to oppose Russia on every other bill that is presented in United Nations. They will then have to vote against Russia, keeping in mind the humanitarian aspect. Hence, using of a nuclear bomb or a dirty bomb will work against Russia if it does that, and it knows that probably. In fact, it also increases the chance for NATO to get inside the conflict, Ukraine. So that's also a negative point for Russia. In fact, Russia can also lose its single largest source of revenue, that is its gas supply, its oil supply, because the West can then have the moral high ground to sanction Russian oil completely, and the whole world face the threat of sanctions if they purchase oil from Russia after this attack, if it happens. So Russia will lose if it actually uses a nuclear weapon or a dirty bomb. Now let's look at if this thing happens, unfortunate thing happens, let's look at what will happen to US. So what US will gain is that it will build a case to supply even more weapons and give even more money to the Zelensky's regime. And all those voices within Washington which are currently accusing it of spending too much money on Ukraine, they will then be silenced, because then Washington will have a moral ground to say, pump in more resources in Ukraine. In fact, it will also get support of other on-the-fence countries like India or probably Middle East countries, China and other countries. But there is also a downside to this. US will then be under pressure to live up to its words and get into the war, directly confronting Russia. And that will be very dangerous for the world, because then things can go anywhere. And at least in theory, nukes can be used. The other negative point for US would be that their fiscal will be completely screwed up, because this Ukraine funding for US economy is not good at all right now. Well, what will Europe gain? Europe will gain nothing. If Russia uses a nuclear weapon or a dirty bomb, or even if Ukraine uses a dirty bomb or a nuclear weapon, Europe will gain nothing, because the radioactive spillover threat will be there, because the wind can actually bring out the radioactive material towards Europe, at least in the bordering areas of Europe-Ukraine border, and that is a negative health impact that can come in, and at the same time it can escalate the war further and pull Europe into unnecessary direct confrontation with Russia, especially considering their arms are running short in supply after this 8 to 9 month conflict of weapons supply to Ukraine. So Europe will not gain anything if such a thing happens, because it's in their neighborhood, right? I mean, today sitting in Washington, or probably sitting in Mumbai, or sitting in Beijing, or sitting in Riyadh, people can say that, hey, we are far away, so we are not affected physically by this conflict. But those who are in Europe are right in the middle of this, and they will directly face the brunt of any such kind of action. So currently, there is, in my personal opinion, there is zero chance for any party to actually use a nuclear weapon right now in Ukraine. I mean, for Russia, it doesn't make any sense. They lose whatever little support they have in the world, and even the radiation spillover can happen even in their territory. Same with Ukraine as well. So I don't think, despite the nuclear rhetoric coming in from both the sides, or both three of the sides, I don't think nukes will be used. But again, all these things are unpredictable. We are living in an unpredictable scenario. But that's just my 2-bit. Now, some people are saying that, these things are also possible, because in Syria, chemical weapons were used. Of course, the US is accusing Russia of using chemical weapons in Syria, and Russia is accusing US. We really don't know who actually is doing that. But it did happen in Syria and in Middle East as well. Chemical weapons or biological weapons were used. Now, whether that will happen in Ukraine is something that we have to wait and watch. Unfortunately, that threat is there. We really wish it doesn't happen. So that was my video on dirty bomb. That's it for this video. This is Degrees signing off. Do subscribe to my channel and like this video. I'll keep posting more updates, and stay tuned.